Welcome to Third Eye Weekly. Joining us today is Travis Krawczyk. He's the CEO and founder of Craftsman Ave, which is a hands-on community in Brooklyn. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be here, guys.
All right, so maybe to start off, what started your inspiration to start this DIY school sort of in Brooklyn?
Sure. So I'm actually not a hands-on maker, and my background is in tech and online. So I spent over 10 years working in front of the screen, designing all kinds of products, brand identity. But I felt that it's nice to see your own creations on a screen, but it's actually nicer to feel it and touch it and make something with your hands. So completely randomly, I got into vintage motorcycle building. I bought an old bike and started, tearing it apart, trying to customize it and kind of apply my design skills onto this physical thing, which I had no idea about. And I realized, okay, this is way out of my comfort zone. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm like all these tools. But then there was still something there, some sort of the sense of gratification of actually working on something physical, besides doing something on a screen. So I kind of dove into that even more, kind of started exploring other areas of product design, industrial design. And a few years later, that passion totally consumed me. So I wanted to learn more and more stuff. And meanwhile, my friends were looking at, and they were kind of like, well, what do you have to do with vintage bike building? Like that's not your field. So they got interested in that as well. So I started teaching them, basic mechanics, basic metalwork, fabrication, and noticed that people from my background, which is the tech world, they found it fascinating. They're like, okay, this is not, for a lot of people, it's kind of intimidating to use power tools, hand tools that you've never really used before. So I noticed, okay, there's something here, right? So we decided, why don't we just let other makers, artists, and creators give them a platform where they can actually teach their skill to other people. So instead of going to college for 3 years and learning woodworking, which I think a lot of people don't want to commit to something like that, but rather have an introductory course of 3 hours basic woodworking or metalwork or jewelry design, and see if this is something that you're interested in learning, or is that something that you might want to pursue in the future. So that was kind of the plan behind Craftsman Avenue. Why don't we create a space, physical space, with all the tools provided, where you can come by, learn from local makers and artists in New York, and kind of figure out maybe there's a skill you want to dive into more.
Nice. So how does the philosophy behind Craftsman Ave evolved since its inception?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, sure. How has this kind of philosophy behind Craftsman Ave evolved so far since its inception originally?
So initially the idea was just to have an online platform where we would connect local makers. We would help them to create a profile page, create an outline of their workshop, and where they would be able to host the workshops at their own sites. But we noticed that space is really hard to get by in Brooklyn. The rents are expensive, and a lot of people have tiny studios where they're not really able to take on more than 2-3 people. So we decided, okay, let's build a physical space and fill it with as many tools as we can, and let the artists actually host the workshops at our space. So 3 months later, we built this space in Gowanus, which is the heart of kind of Brooklyn maker community. And in about 2 weeks, we started rolling out our first workshops with 12 really amazing makers and artists, ranging from jewelry design, leatherworking, chocolate making. So it's really interesting to see this come to life, basically. And it seems like a lot of people are really interested in learning. So far, so good.
Yeah, definitely. I think like what you said, there's a lot of interest in people to combine their intellectual minds with actual physical products. But yet I feel like there's not that many spaces where you can combine those two. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think there's still somewhat of the perception of like working with your hands is feels a little bit outdated and also intimidating. So a lot of people think that, oh well, I have no idea how to build anything with my hands, and that requires years and years of education again. So that scares a lot of people off. But also, it's not really easy to find a space where you can just come by and try something out without committing to like a big project or something. So our idea is to make 2-3 hour workshops really easy and fun, and kind of give the person a little taste of a particular craft.
Do you find that many people come out to these workshops as an alternative to traditional schooling?
Not maybe at this point. So far, it's been more of like a fun experience to do after work or on the weekend. Bringing a couple of friends, bringing a girlfriend, and just have a nice, fun 3 hours instead of going and having a beer or going to the movies. Plus, it's an intellectual growth, so to say, right? There's a psychological aspect to learning something that you've never done before. And research shows you get a release of endorphins and you feel great because, like, wow, you made actually something with your hands, something that you would never perceive that you would be able to do before. So that's super fun to see people who see that little spark in their eye when they use the bandsaw for the first time, or a grinder. So that's definitely inspiring.
So how do you go about choosing some of the artists that teach these classes? I read that there's an heirloom toy making class. How do you find people who have that niche of skill sets to teach?
It's a good question. So we try to figure out what are the most popular arts and crafts tutorials online, and what do people like to make without setting the sort of the skill threshold too high. So we basically identified like 15, 16 different fields and tried to find artists and makers within each discipline. And from then on, we basically go on online, research people, local artists in Brooklyn, and reach out to them, introduce ourselves, introduce our concept. And since they're really good at what they're doing, at a certain point, a craftsman, when you master your craft, you want to kind of share that knowledge with others. And so far, a lot of people have been really open to teaching their skills, basically, because for them it's also it's a way to grow their brand, get more exposure, and also supplement their income. So it's a win-win for them for sure.
Cool. So in your opinion, what are some of the most interesting courses that people can take?
Based on the most popular classes so far has been the art of lettering. So people want to learn typography and lettering. Then we have modern woodworking. Woodworking seems to be really popular. We have basic fabrication. So, learn how to use a grinder, how to work with metal, soldering. Then we have floral design, so where people can actually create, their own floral decorations. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see within the next 2 months of what the most popular classes are. So far, it's a little bit too early to say. So, and it's also going to be a lot of experimentation from our part to try to find out what are people interested in learning. So, we would love to hear, what would you like to learn, so we can find appropriate workshops and basically cover as many different disciplines as we can.
So if you have a membership, you can also go to the space and work on an actual project. What are some of the resources that you can use in utilizing to create a project?
Yeah, so we try to, as I mentioned before, try to fill the studio with as many different tools as we can. So whether you want to get into metalwork and do sculpture, or if you want to create a prototype for your Kickstarter campaign, so we have everything from 3D printing machine to welders, basic hand tools, woodworking tools, jewelry tools. So we're trying to, really make it as broad as possible.
Well, that's all the questions we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.